Hello YouTube, it's RCB and I'm back with another RCB Reviews video, and today I will be reviewing the 15th movie I've seen this year, Life Itself. Now Life Itself really feels more like two films, and this is largely because writer-director Dan Foggleman decided that he wanted to create a movie about two very seemingly unrelated stories that keep intersecting at different points in the lives of the characters. And while it's an interesting concept, and in many ways it's executed well from a technical standpoint, it really left me feeling like there was one good movie here and there was one really uncomfortable movie here. But before I dive into the problems that I have with it, I'm going to talk about some of the good things about it. First off, it is very well acted. Every actor in this movie is firing on all cylinders, and you would imagine something like this would be good if you have these big stars like Oscar Isaac, Olivia Wilde, Mandy Patinkin, Antonio Bandares. And overall, I had no problems with the acting, and the direction was also really well done, but also a little simple in a lot of respects for me. It was edited very interestingly, like a lot of angles that you don't really see in movies as much anymore. Like it looked like a lot of home footage, but it wasn't home footage for some of the scenes. So from the look of it and the acting of it, it's a solid film. But my huge problem is with this first chunk of the movie. It's just so unsettling because Dan Foggleman folds in all of these things, that these plot points that are intended to be payoffs later on in the film, and you understand why he does that. And in the end, you do understand why he does it, but it doesn't really justify the lengths that he goes to with the beginning of this movie. There's this whole opening scene with this accident, and it's supposed to be portraying Samuel L. Jackson at the very beginning of this movie as an unreliable narrator, which gets addressed later on in the film as the idea of Olivia Wilde's college thesis, which is the idea that every story, including life, has an unreliable narrator. That there is no way life can be told without bias, because life itself cannot be unbiased because it is filled with biased people. But also, when people are telling stories, you can't help but have bias when you're telling a story for the way you interpret it. And you see a lot of that playing out today. And while that point was really interesting, the whole idea of this unreliable narrator, the way that it just got paid off in this movie was not satisfying with the storyline, because it feels like Dan Foggleman just tried to take everything that happened to Olivia Wilde's character and Oscar Isaac's character and just rack up the sadness and the really just unsettling sadness. Like, Abby Dempsey is the character that Olivia Wilde plays, and she has just had a horrible life her entire life, and it's just... we don't identify with this. It's unsettling because we don't understand it. And what ends up happening is both Olivia Wilde and Oscar Isaac's characters are out of the picture by the time their daughter shows up, and then it shows the daughter going and making even more sad choices with her life. So this whole first chunk of the movie is just not really enjoyable in a lot of respects. Like, and the humor that some of these people have is just really not appealing at all. It's almost offensive. But aside from all of that, there is a really solid second half of the movie, because it then jumps to a whole other area. It jumps to Spain, and it unfolds this story of Isabel and Rodrigo and their blooming life together and the birth of their son Javier, and the tension between Rodrigo and his boss Vincent Sacchione because of Vincent's past. He really wants to be involved with this family because he felt like he lost his opportunity with that. But Rodrigo is not really having it. He wants his family to be his and Vincent to mind his own business. And in the end, this story was also just kind of sad at times, but it never felt unnecessarily sad. It seemed like it was driving a plot. And it was actually a lot more enjoyable and a lot more emotionally fulfilling as a story. But the problem is, throughout the movie, the story of this family, which inevitably is supposed to be about the family of Javier, the son, intertwining with the family of Oscar Isaac and Olivia Wilde's daughter, played by Olivia Cooke, and her name is Dylan. So the idea is, it's supposed to show how Dylan and Javier end up in the same circumstances and interacting with each other in their own lives through all of these ridiculous moments of intersecting in their family that eventually lead to the end where it is the granddaughter of Javier and Dylan saying how it's so interesting how her life was so intertwined before her grandparents even got together, but it just feels like you're taking a well thought out story in the story of Javier's family and Vincent and mashing it with this really unsettling story at the very beginning. And because the Oscar Isaac, Olivia Wilde part of the story comes first, it takes a long time to get interested in the second half of it again. And it's really just kind of a sad thing because I feel like if you had taken a whole film and focused it just on this family, and yeah, you could have had it fold in at the end with Olivia Cooke's character, and they could have shown that and that be the story, I would have enjoyed it a lot more. But this really unsettling, jarringly violent and sad first chunk of the movie, it just was not... It was too much for me to fully enjoy the film as a whole. By the time I got to the parts I enjoyed more. And yeah, overall, it felt like it could have been something really good, but it got bogged down in trying to be this, how is this all connected story, when the payoffs for how it was connected really weren't as strong as I think Dan Foggleman would have wanted. And I know this is kind of his niche of, he tells sad stories that are supposed to touch you. He's been very successful on NBC by creating This Is Us, but the first story is just too much. It's too much sadness, too much outrageous tragedy in this family to really be able to enjoy the whole movie. So, in the end, I think if they had just taken a little more time and had taken the edges off the first half of the story a little bit, it would have been a better film. But that's not to say that this is any big smear on Dan Fogelman's career. He is a great director and a great storyteller. It's just the type of story that he wanted to tell for this didn't resonate with me. And it really just... It wasn't a success, in my opinion. But I would say you should go see this for yourself, because who's to say that my impressions of this first half of the film are going to be the same way you interpret it. It could be that you lived in a situation that is like this, and therefore you can relate more. But to me, it was just too much, too big, too sad, too tragic to be able to carry the rest of the film. So on a scale of 1 to 5, I would give this movie a 2. I wouldn't say it's totally bad, because there were a lot of good elements that I really could appreciate later on in the film. But overall, as a whole film, it just did not do much of anything to really get me to want to come back and watch it again, ever. So, that's been my take on Life itself. If you have your own feelings about the film, feel free to comment below. And if you want to see more videos from me, click the red subscribe button and the bell to get alerts for when I come up with new material. Anyways, this has been RCB, and I'll see you next time.